Marxists destroy art. That is to say, Democrats, today's Democrats, destroy art. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Do you remember former First Lady Jill Biden's Christmas show a couple years ago? The very weird, whiz-like theatrical performance that paraded through the White House. So odd. If you don't remember it, here's a little recap. Fox 26 out of Houston, a couple of their anchors discussing it. Here it is.
Well, it's being called everything from bizarre to freaky to banana. That's right. First Lady Jill Biden getting some strong opinions from social media over this year's White House Christmas video. So the theme is magic, wonder, and joy, and features members of a New York City-based dance troupe performing an interpretation of the Nutcracker suit. Well, one blogger says that the video gives off a Hunger Game aesthetic. Another saying so much cringe. You tell us. What do you think of the video?
Well, I'll tell you. First off, it's not Nutcracker suit. It's Nutcracker sweet. But yeah, it was like a Hunger Games weirdness come to life. And it's odd when you think about it. But on the other hand, when you consider the mindset of today's Democrats, and you realize that their minds, their logic, their ways of thinking and regarding things in society, both politics and culture, very much more in line with what Marxists think, right? They're much more communist-minded, socialist-minded, Marxist-minded than they are capitalistic-minded or individualist-minded or American-minded. So a show like this, when you realize that it follows that sort of Marxist line of logic about art, then it starts to make sense. And before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my Bold and Blunt newsletter. Just enter your email address at the newsletter section under Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, and you'll get delivered to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday my commentaries, my Bold and Blunt audio versions of my podcast, as well as my Bold and Blunt video versions. One just dropped this week. I interviewed Yael Eckstein. She is the president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and she was over in Israel and interviewed with me about what's going on the ground in Israel now that we have this new pro-Israel administration. But you want to check that out. You want to sign up for my newsletter. You can also get, of course, Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. I also want to quickly mention that I have a new book out that tails nicely with the topic of today's discussion. It's called God-Given or Bust: Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. We already did defeat a little bit of the Marxism back in November when all the Democrats were sent packing. Boo-hoo, so sad, Democrats. Well, now you're out of power. You're out of leadership roles, and we're getting America back to a little bit of sanity, including in the cultural world, in the arts and entertainment world, at least a little bit that's under the publicly funded venues. And before I talk a little bit more about what's going on in the latest in arts and culture in news, by way of breaking news, the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and I have a great guest today who's going to talk about that, I want to talk about just art in general and how Marxists, how communists, how collectivists, because that's what we're talking about. You can make the distinction. You can have your scholarly debates at home around the kitchen table or in the dining room and living room or whatever about the differences between Marxism and socialism and communism and progressivism and Democrat party politics. You can have that debate, but in the end, what you're doing is basically showcasing that all these isms are under one umbrella called collectivism, where the individual exists solely to benefit the state, to benefit the collective. And that stands in stark contrast to what America stands for and was founded upon, and bases its American exceptionalism upon, which is called individualism. And more than that, in America, it's God-given individual liberties and rights. So it's never the government that grants us individual rights. It's that we are born with rights from a creator. And from that truth comes the idea, the governing structure of individualism, of a government that exists solely to preserve and protect what rights we already get from the creator. And so Marxists, communists, socialists, progressives, and the Democrat Party of today don't recognize that. They think that's radical. And what they adhere to is something called collectivism. And what Marxists do, under the idea of promoting the greater good of the state, is they take from Peter to pay Paul. They believe in total equity for all. That's not equality. It's not the same as equality. It's equity. It's all this DEI. It's all this wokeism. But if you look at the art world, and you look at some of your communist nations out there and you consider some of their architecture and you compare that to some of the beautiful architecture that other nations not born and bred and subdued by communism bring forth, you can see that there's a very different ideal of what constitutes art to Marxists, to collectivists, versus what is art to the rest of the world. And bluntly speaking, Marxism destroys art. That's not just me saying this. I found a video that is hosted by a guy named Joel Pelsu. I think I'm butchering his last name, but it's P-E-L-S-U-E. And he is the president of Arts and Entertainment Ministries. And as part of that ministry, he talks about how art that is done in a godly way comes at the artistic endeavor from a place of love, from a place of inspiration, from a place of spiritual beauty, trying to reach for the highest, to represent the beauty in one's soul, in the very soul that God has designed and given at birth, right? So it's all about showcasing the love in one's soul. But Marxists look at art as a show of hate, basically. They hate the idea of patrons helping to foster artistic endeavors by paying for artists to develop art, right? Giving them the time they need through monetary donations so they can develop their art. They hate the idea of that because, of course, patrons are wealthy. And in a Marxist society, there is no such thing as a wealthy individual. They're already evil because they're only wealthy because they have exploited those with less financial means. So in a Marxist world, all patrons would be tossed to the side. All patrons are evil. Their money would be physically taken from them and distributed among the people. And also, the idea of art representing beauty, representing what's in the individual soul, an individual expression, that is an evil in a Marxist mindset as well, because of course, that's selfish of you. If you believe that you are created with a special artistic gift that is different, distinct, and special, right, from anyone else's, a skill, a talent given by God, then that sets you in the warpath of Marxists because they don't believe in the soul, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in special skills and talents given to one. And if one does have a talent and skill, then that special talent and skill must quickly be put to use for the greater good. So if you're an artist in Marxist thinking, then your artistic endeavors must all be expressions of political struggle, of class struggle, of showing how the wealthy exploit the not wealthy. It's all about representing the political struggle that Marxists constantly live under in their world, and they want you to live under it as well. And let me just play a little bit from this video, How Marxism Destroys Art, YouTube, July 28th, 2021, Arts and Entertainment Ministries. Here is Joel speaking a little bit about the patron side and how Marxists want to destroy any sort of patronage of arts.
Marxism demonizes patronage. If you're a Marxist, there goes any hope of a patron or an angel investor. Marx would have you destroy their homes before you take their money. First of all, anyone who has the money to be a patron must have, by definition, acquired their money by oppression, theft, or fraud. These are the people you're supposed to hate. This is why Marx made it clear that in a society like ours, all art should be activist art designed to attack and overthrow the elites.
Well, that's not very inspirational, is it? To just look at constant politicized art. I suppose in the cartoon pages, we like to look at political art. We like to look at, a cartoon here or there that pokes fun at our political leaders. But to elevate all art, or not elevate, to classify all art, to make use of all art as political struggles, as class warfare, fill a museum with that type of art. What a depressing, dark, depressing thought, to go to a museum to look at art like that. But there's more. Marxists also destroy art because they don't believe that capitalism works. They think that the government must have its fingers, its boot, really, in all economic transactions, and that includes the art world. So if you're an artist and you produce something that is reflective of what's in your soul, and many people like it, and they bid on it because they want to own that piece of art and hang it on the walls in their homes, and the value of that piece of art therefore skyrockets because so many people have fallen in love with its beauty, they want to own it. Well, that's good for you as an artist, because then you can sell your art, you can make money off your art, you can one day aspire, at least in America, to become a full-time artist because your art is regarded well enough by enough people who are willing to pay for it, then you can make a living off your art. Well, no, not so fast, say the Marxists out there, those in the Democrat Party, for instance, because if you're making money off your art, well, that's not fair to the artists who aren't making money off their art. So either your money has to be taken and redistributed to those artists who aren't so lucky to make money off their art, or your art has to be subdued in popularity, and the art from the lousy artists out there have to be elevated and pushed into the market, and buyers must be forced to buy the lousy art because that's fair. That's fair. And so there is no free market in Marxist minds, and that includes a free market for artists. So your artistic endeavors really aren't going to be valued in their true form under a Marxist system. Marxists destroy that free market, and that includes free market for artists. So it ultimately results in the art world under a Marxist system, under Democrat control, modern-day Democrat control, is quality doesn't matter. Quality does not matter. What does matter is your story as an artist. Are you a woman artist, a female artist who's had several abortions and has struggled to support yourself financially? Are you a gay black man, a gay Asian man living in a predominantly white community and therefore feel as if you're targeted somehow? See, these are the type of artists that Marxists, without even seeing your artwork, would love to elevate, would love to support. It's the story, it's the narratives that matter, not the quality. So what that leads to, of course, is the true artists out there either don't make money from their art or just are hopeless about ever being able to produce the type of art that their soul wants to produce, and they give up their craft. So back to Joel. He makes a couple other good points I just want to play real quickly. Here he is again.
Marxism destroys creativity. When all art must serve a political ideology, everyone loses. But the greatest loss is for the artists. No longer is the creativity unfettered by political pundits. No longer are they free to say what they want or to follow an idea or an inspiration wherever it leads. No, all art must support the political philosophy of the day. See, Marxism has no room for any other ideas. It knows no grace. It knows no love. It only knows hatred of the elite they seek to overthrow and hatred of anyone who does not fall in line and begin to hate everything they hate.
Is it starting to make a little bit more sense how Democrats like Jill Biden can put on such a depraved show in the White House and consider that artistic, consider that beautiful? Yeah, it starts to make sense when you realize that the Democrats aren't really Democrats any longer. They have gone so far down the road of Marxism, communism, socialism, that their judgment in their own minds has been clouded. And what is normal and beautiful and inspirational, they see as abnormal and ugly and depressing. And so they do a 180 on that, and anything that's dark and divisive and ugly, they want to elevate and turn that into beauty. It's about flipping norms. It's about uprooting traditions. It's about throwing out the commonly accepted and ushering in the depraved, the no-holds-bar type of living, the chaotic situation, the chaotic type of living. Because in chaos, big government thrives. They can come in, swoop in, and claim to be the savior of the chaotic situation that they themselves have created. So why culture? Why art? Why am I discussing Marxism destroys art today? Well, the Kennedy Center has been in focus lately. The Kennedy Center is one of the premier arts centers in the nation. It's in Washington, D.C. It's a huge venue, and it has been corrupted by this Democrat, Marxist, collectivist, communist ideology in recent years. And we're getting shows in the Kennedy Center, or we were getting shows in the Kennedy Center that elevated drag queens, right? Drag queen performances and sick things like that you wouldn't want your kids to see or be influenced by. And yet these are the type of shows at the Kennedy Center, which is in large part funded by tax dollars and by patrons and by corporate sponsors. These are the types of things that we have been paying for. Well, Donald Trump is now the president, and as part of his recent presidential actions, he has uprooted the board of trustees, ousted the leftist ideology influences from the Kennedy Center, and we have a new batch of board members there who are looking to replace the drag queen shows with things that are actually beautiful. And I find this very interesting because it's part of the Democrat mindset nowadays to just put forth the ugliest in art and claim that art. And if you're somebody who calls that out as just disgusting or not art, then you are the one who is intolerant. So yay, Kennedy Center. Maybe I'll go up there now and see a show now that I don't have to sit there through drag queen performances. But in the meanwhile, I have a guest today who has been studying this issue for some time, and he's really honed in on President Trump's recent actions on the Kennedy Center. And he also believes that this is a story that is sort of fallen by the wayside, but it really does have cultural significance for the entire nation at large. Zachary Marschall, he is the editor-in-chief of Campus Reform, and he's here to discuss what's going on in the arts world in Washington, D.C. Zachary, thank you so much for being here on Bold and Blunt. So great to have you here.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I want to talk about what's going on with the Kennedy Center because I think this is one of those stories that has great significance, but it's kind of falling under the radar. So give the rundown what's taking place.
You're absolutely. This has really fallen under the radar given all that's happening. What happened is in February, President Trump announced that he was going to get rid of the Biden-appointed trustee members of the Kennedy Center, which is the premier performing arts center in Washington, D.C., and replaced them with his own picks. And then after that happened, the following week, the new board installed him as the new chairman of the Kennedy Center, and he replaced a Biden ally who had been running the Kennedy Center for years. This has been a very big deal in the arts community in D.C. and also nationally, especially with theater and with musicians. President Trump is really pointed to the drag performances that are being targeted to kids as his motivation for this, as well as all of the far-left ideologies that were being infused in the Kennedy Center, not just on stage, but also in the people who are being tapped as leaders, the people who are being honored at the Kennedy Center Honors, which happens every December, and all the programming and initiatives they do in Washington, D.C. President Trump felt that if America is going to fund the Kennedy Center with taxpayer money, it should only be funding work that is the best work and the best art, and not these far-left ideologies that make people proclaim their adherence to Black Lives Matter or to gender ideology. So this has really caused a huge stir in the arts and culture field here, and I think it's a great thing for President Trump to do because he is really restoring the Kennedy Center back to its founding mission, which is to make only the best art available to all Americans, regardless of their background or politics.
I know art, like beauty, is oftentimes in the eye of the beholder, but isn't it odd how some on the far left take the things that are the ugliest, most deep in the mud, and they elevate those things as if those are beautiful and those are art forms?
Yeah, even the popular expression is that there's no accounting for taste, but there absolutely is accounting for taste. And I think what you just said, people really sensed on a subconscious and a visceral level about a few years ago when Jill Biden had that ridiculous performing troupe at the White House.
Yes.
That I think people were very uncomfortable with it, and like it rubbed them on the wrong level for a very good reason. It was ugly and it was depraved, and what they were sensing was discomfort with the White House, which is a symbol of our national identity. It's the center of American power. It is putting on something that was only there because the people involved in that troop somehow conformed to the idea of what the Bidens thought America should be like. It had nothing to do with artistic excellence. And there's a direct comparison between what happened there and what's been going on for years at the Kennedy Center. If you look at their programs, their advertisements, their social justice initiatives, they are touting new artists and new things they're putting on in the realm of theater and opera and music, because the people involved are a certain ideology or they're a certain race or a certain identity. The idea that they're worthy of being put on the Kennedy Center is never really mentioned, and if it is like down below. So no one's saying there should be a litmus test for what kinds of people should be allowed on stage or not allowed on stage. What I think President Trump and his allies are saying is that if we're going to put people on stage, it's because they have to be artistically excellent and the best representation of American creativity, not because they somehow reflect what we think America should be like according to a certain political ideology.
I'm glad you brought up that really weird odd and I don't know, just perverse White House Christmas display that Jill Biden had put out there. Because I just wonder, can you speak to the psychology of people? What is going on in their minds or their twisted souls to look at things like that and think that that's representative of great art or beauty? Is it something that they're doing on purpose for a political agenda, or do you think they really love this stuff?
I think the best way to answer that is compare her to a much better first lady, in my opinion, which is Jackie Kennedy. So in 1962, Jackie Kennedy did a televised tour with ABC of the White House. She spearheaded a brand new initiative, which was that the White House, regardless of who is going to be president going forward, was going to collect American antiques that represented the best examples of American craftsmanship and creativity. And she did a tour of what they had decorated so far, what they had collected, and what they were working on. And throughout that entire interview, which anyone can watch for free on YouTube, she says only the best will do at the White House. It should only be the best. And that was very much the ethos that went into the founding of Kennedy Center, which was launched in 1971. This is all, that got lost over the decades as people in academia and the arts, those who have the power to tell the rest of the public what counts as good art, what counts as talent, and what counts as market sophistication, changed over the years. So by the time you get to Jill Biden, she's part of a cohort of cultural and political leaders that genuinely believe they know what is the best and what is most sophisticated, but what they don't realize is that what they're judging on is based on political ideology and affinity. So they are seeing people like them who want to force everyone else to use certain pronouns, who want to embrace legal immigrants as if because it makes them feel good inside, and they see that kind of that sensibility as like a marker of sophistication. So in their minds, people who don't share that sensibility and people who think differently from them are somehow intellectually and culturally inferior to them. And that's why you would never have the kind of Christmas decorations you saw with Melania Trump in the Biden White House, and why you never really see conservative performers at the Kennedy Center in prominent positions, whether it's getting a Kennedy Center honor, being on the main stage, or being among the special VIP guests at the different events throughout the year.
It makes me think of the, and I don't know if you've read this, you can tell me if you have or not, but it makes me think of the Ayn Rand novel, Atlas Shrugged, and the character Edmund Toohey. He used to collect all these low talent people in arts and put them out there as if they were now the new standard of what was great. And it just seems a society that is reflective of a culture that's degraded when you have shows like this going forth at the Kennedy Center.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it corrodes and it makes us worse off because the arts and culture, it works on many levels to make us better. It makes us better as individual people. It brings us together, and it's also a form of power that benefits us. Our ability to project American influence and identity through our film, through our television, through our music, and through our plays, that influences the rest of the world, and that's a form of soft power that our presidents are able to exert on the world stage. And when that gets corrupted by divisiveness and by one part of the country telling the other part what to think and what to do, the celebration of American identity in all its diverse forms gets completely corrupted, and that diminishes community cohesion and diminishes our sense of patriotism and our sense of what being an American is.
Well said. And thinking further on that path, it also really punishes hard work and talent, right? Because if you have somebody, 2 years old studying ballet and they're thrown off stage or not allowed to perform when they're in their 20s and at the top of their game because of a DEI hire or a drag queen performance, that's really a slap in the face to hard work and talent.
Oh, absolutely. And then it goes even deeper than that because there was a period of about 5 to 10 years where you had people admonish high art. They admonished ballet for being racist and part of white supremacy. Campus Reform reported on that a few years ago. And if these, I would say, tastemakers, and I'm using that term very loosely, in academia and in the arts, really decided that they were going to queer the arts form. And by that, I mean literally they were going to make different characters queer in different stories that they were putting on, and also trying to upend this idea of what is good art and what represents artistic exceptionalism from the everyday life that we all go through. And I think that really made them more powerful because they created a language that only they could speak. So if you did not share their sensibility, if you did not vote like them, if you did not talk like them, you were going to lose access to jobs, not just the Kennedy Center, but any museum or performing arts center in the entire country, whether that was behind the scenes or on stage. There's been a period of years where white men, no matter if their merit, were unable to get jobs because they had to be sacrificed for diversity hires. So museums and different performing arts centers can meet these arbitrary quotas and benchmarks they created to fulfill their DEI missions.
I guess it's the same type of thinking, thought process, logic, or whatever, agenda that makes us, even now today, when you go into some retail stores, you'll see, and this is going to sound, this is very politically incorrect, but just to be blunt about it, you'll see plastered on the walls 300-pound women in lingerie or swimsuits, bikinis, pictures of them, as opposed to the traditional models of, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of like, it's an inverse of The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Yes.
The reason why those 300-pound models are there is because this academic idea that part of critical math studies in university classes says we can be healthy at any size, and to even tell someone they're overweight or should lose weight is a form of fat phobia. That's nonsense. We all know that the heavier you are, the more you punish your heart, the more at risk you are for a bunch of diseases that can kill you, and you're objectively not healthy. The same is true in the arts too. There's with modern opera, with different kinds of experimental theater, if you look at the programs and the web announcements of these things, it talks about the backstory of the artist. It never really mentions, though, why what they're doing is excellent or impressive. It just mentions that they struggle and they reached, they suffered adversity and they have these identities. So it's written and presented in a way by these tastemakers that make it impossible, unless you face social ostracization, for you not to say that, it wasn't really that good. A lot of the new stuff is boring and it's really not worthy of people's time. But you can't say that because you have to like it. Otherwise, you are a bigot. And I think the same thing would be true if you looked at a picture of a obese woman and said, that's not beautiful, that's just gross.
Or in a comedy show, if you laugh at the wrong type of humor, right, you'll be ostracized for that. And as a result, a lot of comedians just aren't funny anymore, right?
Exactly. It's really ruined the arts. And, two quick examples I think really highlight this from my own experience is I went to a murder mystery play in D.C. a few years ago, and they had a bunch of trigger warnings that were politically correct. And the sign said in part, there would be gunshot and smoke at the beginning of the second act.
Oh.
So, it was ruined for me right there. And the recent Star Wars franchise, which I know has been a target of, critics and fans for years, is an example of that. The lack of humor that we see in stand-up comedy is, parallels to the lack of spontaneity and surprise and authenticity we see in these films that are created by committees. I mean, there was one of everything in the Star Wars movies. It was very predictable who was going to say what and who looked like what, and that's not art. that's bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's like propaganda or something. And thankfully, there is a backlash brewing. And not only have you found that with the Kennedy Center, which is great news, but you've also written this piece, and I want to finish up with this. You've written this great piece in The Hill, How Linda McMahon Can Rule Out and Destroy Camouflaged DEI Programs, Department of Education's new chief. So talk a little bit about that, what you expect to see from Linda.
Yeah, so I think I wrote the piece in The Hill saying that Linda McMahon should create a panel of experts to help the Department of Education audit and root out DEI that still exists in colleges and universities that goes against President Trump's executive order banning it. What I see from Secretary McMahon is that she is very much intent on winding down the scope of operations in the department to make it as bare bones as possible until the time at which President Trump can actually abolish the department. So I think she's trying to work herself out of a job, and to make those goals the most effective for her, she really needs to tap experts who have firsthand experience in the academy, because the one thing the left has been very good at and is getting better at is hiding DEI in rebranded and reworded offices or initiatives. They're using words now like belonging or community, or they're taking out the E, so now it's diversity inclusion. So you can't just control F DEI in a university directory and find it. You need people who know how the left operates and how they argue, because without that inside expertise, it's very hard to combat the left when they're trying to argue and show that they're just promoting diversity, which is a malicious claim and a false claim. So I think Secretary McMahon will be best off serving the American people if she uses a panel of academics and professors who have experience with this and can help the bureaucrats and lawyers in the department root out DEI.
That's some good advice, and good stuff, good coverage. Zachary Marschall, I want to thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt. Look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. And one more time, don't forget to pick up a copy of my latest book, God-Given or Bust, Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.